Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Lovely to see you all. Some familiar names and faces appearing on my screen. Welcome to everyone. I think I've been in touch with some of you quite recently about supporting you with GCSE drama. So hopefully today, all your questions and queries will be answered. I'm Paul Webster. I'm the subject advisor for the Drama and Performing Arts qualifications at Pearson, and I'll be leading you through this today. As your subject advisor, I can provide you with support and guidance on teaching and assessing our qualifications, including the focus of today, which is GCSE drama. I'll share my contact details with you at the end of the session. For now, please feel free to say hello in the chat and let us know where you are. Whilst you're doing that, I'll just give you a brief overview of today's session and what we'll be covering. We'll be looking at the structure and overview of the qualification, and then we're going to go into the details of each of the three components, and then we will be looking at how we can plan the course and the resources that are available. And there will be lots of opportunities for you to ask questions throughout the session. Look at all these locations. It's a wonderful international crowd we've got today. Egypt, Barcelona, Norfolk. I mean, I love it. Absolutely wonderful. So welcome to you all. Brilliant stuff. What we'll do is if you do have any questions that come up, and if you want to put them into the chat as we go through, that's absolutely fine. At the end of each component, there will be a Q&A section if you want to wait until then, but it's fine if you want to ask a question. It's burning in your brain and you need to share it. So I'll give you a quick overview of the GCSE. It's been available since 2016. I can't believe it's been that long. It's quite incredible, really. The first assessment was in summer 2018. That was the first kind of overall certification. There are two external assessments, components 2 and 3, which are available once a year, and that's for those students who it's in the final year, in the year of certification. And there is one internally assessed component, and that can be done at any point during the course up until May of the final years for the students. We have lead examiner and lead moderator's reports available after each exam series. And we've also got online recorded and live materials available and published resources. But as I said, we'll have a look at those a little bit later on. In terms of the structure of the qualification, component 1 is 40%. That's the devising component. Students work in groups of performers and designers, if you have any designers, and they will produce a portfolio to sit alongside the performance that they do. And this is internally assessed by you and externally moderated by Pearson. Component 2 is worth 20% of the qualification. This is the performance or the designing of 2 extracts from one text, and this is an externally assessed component either by a visiting examiner or via recording. And then component 3, theatre makers in practice, is 40%, worth 40% of the qualification. This is the written exam. There are questions on a set text, and there are 12 set texts to choose from. And students are given the extract in the exam, so they don't need to take a copy of the set text in with them. There's also the evaluation of live theatre, where students can refer to a piece of theatre that they've seen and they can take in notes with them. But again, more on that later. The exam is 1 hour and 45 minutes long and tends to be one of the earliest exams that's available in the series, which has pros and cons. There are some that prefer to do it quite early on because of the pressure that students have with with other qualifications that they're doing. And some would prefer to have it a little bit later, but this is where we're at. It's usually around the 9th and 10th of May when it takes place. Bethany's come in with a question. Hello. If you're overseas, you do still have the choice of requesting an examiner for component 2, but that's something that you'd need to discuss within your centre about the costs that are involved with that. And if it's not possible to get a live examiner to you, then you would record it and the work would be assessed via recording for component 2. And component 1, you assess it and then it's moderated via the recordings. So my pleasure, let's go into component 1. And now you might not begin the course by teaching component 1, and we'll look at different approaches to how you might want to plan the terms of the structure over the 2 years. But component 1 is probably the first thing that you will do with the students that's going to be kind of a complete piece of work. Now, on the screen, you will see in the top right-hand corner, there's a pink box which says Centre Guide to Devising. Now, we've got a pack for you, which hopefully you got the link for yesterday or today. In that pack, there is a copy of the slides. If you open them, you're able to click on these links. So anything that is in pink, you're able to click on, and that will take you to the document on the website. We have also included this centre guide in the pack as well, but just so that you know, if you wanted to follow this presentation with those slides open, you're able to click on the pink links. So within component 1, students work in groups of 3 to 6 performers with up to 4 designers. So one group could potentially have 10 students all working together. And students are going to devise performance work lasting between 10 to 25 minutes. So that just depends on the number of performers within the group. So if it's 3 to 4, then it's usually 10 to 15 minutes. And if it's 5 to 6, then it's usually 20 to 25 minutes. Now, you can give the students between 1 and 3 stimuli as a starting point, and these can be images, they can be interviews, they can be songs, it can be anything really apart from an extract from a play text. So that's what you need to avoid sharing with them. You choose what the stimuli are. We don't provide the stimuli. In a moment, I'll show you some examples of what they could be, but it's up to you what you feel is appropriate for your students, and what you think will get their creative juices flowing. The students can use, if say, for example, you gave them all 3 stimuli, they could use all 3 as a starting point. They might just choose one. That's up to them. And if you have a large group of students, you have a large cohort, you wanted to give them different stimuli, that's entirely up to you. It's always interesting to see how different groups of students respond to the same one. The work will need to be performed to an audience, and that's an audience that you choose. So it could be other students and teachers. It could be that you have an invited audience of parents and family, entirely up to you. The performance itself is worth 25% of the marks in the component. You're going to assess it, and then we will externally moderate it. Now, you choose the samples, so you choose which ones that you will submit to us, and we want to see a range, basically, of work, including the highest, the lowest, and then those in between. So you'll submit the marked work to us when the students are in their final year by the 15th of May. The 15th of May is kind of like a key deadline, a key date that it's always remains the same each year. That is the final deadline for component 1. Now, as well as the performance, the students have to create a portfolio, and this portfolio evaluates the process and the performance that they've created. This can be written, it can be recorded. There's a number of ways of doing this, and it's worth 75% of the component marks. Georgina has asked, it can't be a play text. No, that's right. Can a stimulus be a blurb to a play or a novel? Yeah, it could be a description of a novel or a play. It could be a review. That could be one way to do it, just not the actual not the actual kind of script itself, not the dialogue from the script. Andy, we do have lots of examples of portfolios. And hello, Andy. We were talking the other day, and glad to see you here. And I'll show you where those are very shortly. Now, here are some ideas about the type of stimuli that you could use. Every year, as I said, we have a principal moderator report which comes out once the awarding has taken place, and there's so much useful information in there. So it will be interesting for you to have a look in August when the report comes out, once results days happened, so you're able to see the type of work that students have been doing. So in terms of stimuli, pictures and photos seem to be the most popular choice because they can be immediate, they can be interpreted in lots of different ways. But, you know, it could be that it's a news article, it could be that it's a song, it could be that it's a quote or a poem. There's lots of ways, lots of kind of different stimuli. And there are some really inventive ways of doing this where you as the teacher could see that there might be some links between the stimuli that you choose, or you might just go for some really interesting juxtapositions and contrast between the stimuli that you give to the students to see what they come up with. Popular themes, this is from last year, included disability, bullying, issues around body image and teenage issues, gangs and knives, climate change, PTSD, mental health. I mean, so many interesting topics that young people want to explore because of how they are exposed to it through the news and through social media and through the communication that they have with each other. So it's really good to find some interesting stimuli that inspires high quality devised performances. So the portfolio is worth 45 marks from 60 available in the component, and it's really important that your students understand how many marks are going to go on the portfolio, how much it means in terms of the mark available. So yes, they can be coming up with some incredible work in terms of the performance, but the fact that 75% of the marks come from how they're evaluating and how they're analysing what they've done it's really significant. So I will get to those questions in a moment from Dahlia and Sophia, but the two assessment objectives are around creating and developing ideas to communicate meaning and the analysis and evaluation of their own work. Dahlia, in terms of your question, can what they're devising be based on more than one stimuli combined together? Absolutely. So if, for instance, they loved all three stimuli that you gave them and they create something which is responding and working and interrogating all three, that's absolutely fine. Sophia, can the devised performance be inspired by any style, genre, practitioner? Yeah, absolutely. So as part of the teaching and learning, a part of you introducing them to the language of theatre and drama, it may be that you are introducing them to particular practitioners and styles, and that's all being absorbed, and they just want to take it all on. Within our specification, there isn't a requirement within component one that students have to refer to a particular practitioner. If they want to, that's absolutely fine, but there's no explicit discrete marks for the inclusion of a particular practitioner. Teshom, I hope that's how you say your name. Can it be any famous literature works? Yeah, again, we play texts are a no-no, but it may be that there is an extract from, I don't know, Huckleberry Finn or Wuthering Heights or anything that is literature that you think, yeah, that could absolutely just a passage from it or an introduction that again, that might be something that works for them and they want to do. These are the 6 portfolio questions, and these follow the trajectory through the process of developing work. So what was your initial response to the stimuli and what were your intentions? So the idea is that we're kind of getting the students to really focus on what is it that we want to achieve, what is it that we're exploring and interrogating, and what do we want to share with our audience. What did you do in order to explore the stimuli and start to create ideas? Again, really straightforward about giving specific examples about what they did. So what were some of the significant moments during the process when rehearsing and refining? So again, it's really explicit in there to go, tell us, give us some examples of what was happening and why this was happening. What decisions were you making? How did it refine your work? How was it kind of improving it? How did you consider genre, structure, character, form, style, and language? I mean, it's quite sophisticated, isn't it, in terms of what we're asking them to do, which is it's about understanding what are the building blocks of performance work. How does all this stuff fit together? These are all elements that students need to be taught about. So it's interesting to think, well, we're not just telling a story, we've actually thought about how this is structured. So are we going with episodes? What form is this taking? What are the decisions that we're making in order to communicate with the audience? Have we got direct address? Have we got voiceovers? Have we, what are we doing what are the choices and decisions that we're making? Question 5, how effective was your contribution? Which is a student being as objective as possible about what they did and what they added to this to make this work. And were you successful in what you set out to achieve? So some quite interesting kind of questions there, which a student really, in order to be able to do this, is going to have to be keeping notes as they go through the process. So the tip at the top there is about students creating a working diary in order to give them some basically to help them remember what they've done and also to prompt them if they are doing a bit of following and not necessarily leading. It's that thing that they need to be able to kind of like go, yeah, I do. We're working in a group, but I am going to have to make some contributions. So interesting question there from Georgina about the key terms. So yeah, so we've got so in terms of style, it can be naturalistic, it can be physical theatre, we can talk about epic, we can talk about, these kind of overarching descriptions of styles and not everything fits neatly into a nice little box. You think about most plays that we see, hardly any are just pure naturalism. They incorporate other things as well. So I think it's important to ensure that students understand that. In terms of structure, yeah, as you said, cyclical, linear, episodic. Are we just seeing 15 minutes of something that's happening sequentially? Are we seeing the story being told backwards? Have we got flashbacks? What's going on there? Form is an interesting one because, well, the form of something is, well, we've decided that heavily narrated, and the narrator is being presented in lots of different ways. So the narrator could be a storyteller within the performance who's telling giving information to the characters on the stage, but then they step out of it and they talk directly to the audience. There is an example of form. It's like it's the specifics of the storytelling, really, of what the students have decided to do. So form is like really getting to the nitty gritty of we are always it's those elements, those choices that they're making about the moment by moment decisions. So you can talk about the use of placards as in the style. So we're talking about, epic theatre, but then the form of it, how those placards are shared, are they are they just presented on sticks? Are they projected? Do they come at a particular moment in the scene? Are they given in a handbook that the audience takes from under their seat and they look through and then they have to find the placards themselves? There's so many different ways of doing this, but they're all examples of form. Yeah, you could say that form is like conventions, but it's a bit more specific, I'd say, because it's like individual to the particular piece that's being done. So you could take any production that you might have seen and you could analyze the form, and it would probably be different to virtually everything else that you've seen. So it's really about very specific decisions that are being made. Hope that makes sense. So a good thing to so a good thing to do is to teach the students how to create and maintain detailed working diaries, capturing key moments in the devising process. Because as I said, it acts as a diary. It's like I'm keeping the notes because I would have forgotten that otherwise. But also it acts as a prompt to say, do I need to do a little bit more here and there? So examples of good practice, and this was highlighted in the last principal moderator report, is about the students using research skills to inform the performance and the development of their ideas, that they shape and develop ideas practically rather than repeating and polishing without progression, that they work collaboratively, they actively contribute to the exploration, the refinement, and the rehearsal process, that they engage fully with their role, they're thinking about how their role impacts the work as a whole. They ensure that the work is carefully rehearsed and polished for the performance with a focus on creativity and impact on the audience. So I suppose there's enough time given to them to get to the point where they've finished creating and then they are rehearsing to do the polishing. A difficult thing to do, but always a really useful thing to do rather than them devising up to the moment of the performance. And reflecting on the final performance through making clear notes is always a good thing to do. Now, in component one, as the teacher, you're the assessor, but you're not a director in this. You're not when they're creating the work. So you're facilitating them. So, and what we obviously want to do is to encourage the students to take ownership of the work. And to do that, they need to be sufficiently prepared before the assessment begins. So things to consider are like how you can effectively give feedback to them without directing them. So it might be through the questions that you're asking them. You might do a bit of Socratic questioning where you are saying, is that, you've said this is your objective. Is this really effective in terms of what you're doing? It may be that you are giving them, devising exercises that foster innovation. And so just things to consider about how do you set up your students effectively in order for them to be able to run with this rather than for you to feel like you're having to kind of teach them as they're going through. We have lots of examples of device performances on our website across all levels, and I'll show you our exemplar library. If you haven't seen that already, it also contains lots of portfolios, and the most successful students in creating their portfolios are going to cover the 6 questions and the essential areas of coverage. Wherever possible, we would advise to have them with the questions and they answer each question rather than it just be like a continual flow of prose, or if they're recording it that they're just talking about it generally. Having the questions can give such a great structure to them and also to you in terms of making sure that they've hit everything and they can access the full range of criteria. So make use of the word count and timings to allow for the level of detail required. The questions do not count in the word count. So yeah, don't worry about that. They will need to refer to health and safety considerations. And it might be that they talk about it in a paragraph. It might be that they intersperse it throughout. There aren't any marks as such for it, but they will need to refer to some health and safety considerations. And I think that's just a requirement, and they don't need to do a lot basically on that. Probably best so in terms of health and safety considerations, it may be, for instance, that if they're doing a lot of movement and physical work, that they do refer to what they've had to consider when doing that. So, frantic assembly are so revered and so used within Key Stage 4, as we all know. There's a lot of stuff that makes that makes their work so accessible and so liked by students. But some of it's really straightforward. Other bits, though, with the lifts and things and some of the movement sequences, there has to be a consideration of health and safety. So it's in reference to that around when doing lifts, did they learn anything? Was there any training going on? It's just about ensuring that they are able to, they've considered and they're looking after themselves and they're not taking any unnecessary risks. Bethany, yeah, it is possible to break up the word count equally across the 6 questions. There's enough that the student would be able to talk about in each one to be able to meet them. Because when you think about the word count, it's actually when you break it down in terms of some of the ideas that they might have had, it's like about 300 words per question. So it may be that. But go for breaking it up equally for the 6 questions. Avoid general discussion and a diary-like approach in the portfolio, and using drama terminology to explain and analyze is going to put them in good stead, because not just because it shows that they know about these words, but actually, as we were talking before about style and structure and form, this is like knowing this information is actually really useful, because it may be that you can create work without knowing them. But when you do know the rules, when you do know that there is actually a structure, and it's fascinating to then go, that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm using this particular technique. And I've seen that professional production where they use that technique as well. It kind of clarifies what we can do and how things are done. Okay, so that's it for component 1. If anybody has any questions at this point, any further questions, then please say. And it's also fine if a question comes to you later about component 1, don't worry. On the screen, you will see there's a guidance for portfolios. If you're following along in with the slides, and there's also our frequently asked questions document, which has got loads and loads of questions in. So So it's worth having a look at that. I'm just going to have some water. Hello, Oliver. Um, you're currently doing AQA, right? Great. And yes, they are similar. In fact, the specifications for AQA, EDUCAS, OCR, and us, they are all similar. The differences are some slight variance. So I think within AQA, there is a requirement that when they are devising that they must refer to a practitioner. So I think that's one example. And also within the written exam, they are asked questions about roles and responsibilities. I feel like there's a multiple choice section. So that's something to apart from that, it's the set texts. They're obviously different. But really, it's the pretty similar. Yeah, yeah. So I feel like if you're moving to use ours, there's so much that you'll be able to carry on with. Obviously, though, you will just need to check to make sure that the word counts are the same. I think another thing to consider within AQA, I think they can do duologues for component for the devising. I'm sure they can. And that is something that we are currently considering at the moment around offering that as an option within component one that students would be able to do duologues, but more news on that in the future, hopefully not too distant future. Okay, couple more questions through. Catherine, about form. Yeah, so say for example, um, you have decided on the style you want to do a physical theatre piece, so you can say that that is the style that you're using, um, and then the structure of it is that it's going to be episodic, so there's going to be 8 scenes, yeah, and they're all of equal length. And then the form is going to be the choices that they make within that to communicate with the audience. So yes, it's episodic and yes, it's physical theatre. But what else is going on? Is the narration, for example, and how does that narration take place? So, with that example that I used before, narration could be done in a number of ways. It could be where it's direct to the audience, where each actor stands and speaks directly to the audience one by one in a line. It could be that there's a recording, there's a voiceover that's used whilst the naturalistic scene continues. So it's kind of like balancing the two. It could be a projection that is used onto the stage, it could be across the t-shirt, it could be on the cyclorama at the back. There are specific decisions that are used, and that's what the form is. So it's about going a bit deeper into the content of the work and specific decisions that are made. So I hope that clarifies it. What else do we have? Kip, hello, Kip, how you doing? Um, okay, so reluctant to make 5 to 6 person groups because of the timing. Can you give any advice? I know that there's no official penalty for going under, but I want to. Yeah, so I think if you feel like it's too much, if you feel like that, if like 25 minutes is far too much for the students, then I suppose it's okay, there is a bit of a balance here, and it's interesting that you're saying about there's no penalty for going under. If the students are on the stage all the time and they are always performing and always doing stuff, then it's slightly different to if they've kind of got, oh, there's only two of them on for these 2 minutes and then the next two come on. So the more stage time that they have, you can then think, actually, although we're not at the 25-minute mark, there's enough there for them to be able to show how much that they've done. So I don't know whether that helps, but just thinking, if they're just doing stuff all the time, if they're always in role, that actually going to the top time limit isn't necessarily a requirement. Samantha, the recorded portfolio. Now, it doesn't get chosen very often. Written is more popular. And that's, I feel, because that's that because there are some students who are very eloquent when it comes to speaking and speaking to camera or speaking to an audience. And if they do decide to do a verbal portfolio like an audio-visual one, they can use notes. There's no reason why they can't, in the same way that the student who is doing the written portfolio can use notes to do this. So I think it's more to do with what do they feel comfortable doing? Are they able to express themselves clearly when they are speaking? In the same way that with the written portfolio, a student can get feedback on the first draft, the same can happen with a verbal portfolio. So if you're thinking, actually some of the students are just so confident when but they just can't communicate effectively through written form, give it a go with them, try it out, see how they get on. And you never know, that they might just thrive and flourish with it. It's unfortunate that we don't have hardly any examples of the recorded ones, and that's just because we just haven't, the students just haven't done them. So if you're thinking that you'd like to and they go well, please let me know, because it'd be great to then use it as exemplars. It'd be absolutely brilliant. Dahlia, the recording has to be from the live performance, not recorded specifically for the exam. Yeah, so the idea being that this is a live performance and that you are capturing it with a recording. So they're not performing to screen. They are performing to an audience that's sat in front of them, and that the camera is capturing them as they do it. So let's think of it that way, that this is theatrical performance, and that's what we're trying to capture. Uh, and you've asked, the maximum is 6 performers. So if you have a group of 10, they can't all be performers, so you'd have to split them up. Well, you would either do, if they all wanted to perform, 2 groups of 5. If some of them wanted to do design, then they could all work together on the same piece. And hello, Rebecca, could they get feedback from the audience? They could. Absolutely, yeah. And there's a number of ways in which they could do that. It could be a questionnaire, it could be a Q&A at the end. It could be that the students say, this is what we wanted to do. These were our objectives, to come up with a comedy about the meaning of life through physical theatre. Did we make you laugh? Or did you find it utterly depressing and nihilistic? And so you could approach it in that way and see how they get on. Right, I feel that's it for component 1. There aren't any other questions. So let's move on now to component 2. And this is the performance from text. In this component, students can design or perform in 2 extracts from the same play. That means they can perform in both, they can design in both, they can perform in one and design in the other. The only thing that is the same is that the 2 extracts are from the same play. So they can't do an extract from one play and then an extract from another play, but they can choose to do whatever they want. They can do 2 monologues, they can do 2 duologues, they can do group work. The options there are just multiple options. There's hardly anything they can't do there. There are no restrictions. If they want to work in groups, they can do, and if they do, then it's a group of 3 to 6, but it's not compulsory at all. A student could just do 2 monologues. They could just design for 2 monologues. If they are designing, they will need to work with someone else. So if, for instance, they wanted to design a monologue from, I don't know, Hamlet, that they would need to work with a performer who is performing a monologue from Hamlet. This is performed to an audience. It's 20% of the grade. It will take place in year 11, in the year of certification, and the window is January to April. So it's the beginning of January to the end of April. As we were saying before, it can be a visiting examiner or it can be a digital submission. And within your cohort, you can choose as many plays as you wish. You don't have to make all students choose from the same play. The only rule is that the play or plays chosen in component 2 must contrast with the set text. And we'll get onto that in a bit. Sophia, can a student do one monologue for the first extract and then a group performance? Yes, they can, as long as it's from the same play. Georgina, the dates for so basically you can submit the dates that you want to do. So if, for instance, you wanted to do them in February, then when we've allocated an examiner to you, you can say, these are my selected dates. Can you do them? If they can, then fantastic. If you need to negotiate, then you can do that. If it's just not feasible, then we can see about a different examiner to see if they can do it. So there are a number of options. Okay, so there are pros and cons of the visit or the digital submission in that this is live theatre, so and live performance, and it's there to be viewed in the same space as the performance when it's taking place. But there's no difference really in terms of how the marks are allocated, whether it's from a recording or whether it's live. And it's really about determining what works best for you. Our examiners are trained using recordings. They're not trained using live performances because they're trained like in the weeks leading up to when the component 2 is being assessed. So it's as fresh as possible. So if you think about it that way, the examiners are trained using recordings. So they're trained to look at what is in front of them on the screen. So there's pros and cons to both. Dahlia, if it's recorded, do you have to stick to a specific date? You need to confirm with your examiner when it's going to be. Yeah. So if you say that it's going to be in March, if something happens, then you just tell them, it's not that it would be set in stone. If there are things just out of your control, then of course you can change the date. That's not a problem. Yes, there needs to be an audience. The audience can be whoever you determine you want the audience to be, depending on your cohort. Again, it could be invited friends and family. It could be that it's other students. It could be that it's just other students within the group. It's up to you, and the context of your particular group. Maggie, oh, you're in the Channel Islands. I think it is. Yes, it is possible for you to have a visiting examiner, but we might need to pick that up separately if that's okay, because I'm not sure. I'm hoping that you count as the UK, but we need to find out. So maybe you can contact me separately and we can talk about that. Couple of reminders there of the group sizes and the time lengths for according to what the student chooses to do. So 2 to 3 minutes for a monologue, 3 to 5 for a duologue, and then between 10 to 15 minutes for a group extract. The number of audience isn't an issue. And as long as there is an audience, then that's fine. You don't need to film the audience, for example. It's not that we would judge you on that, but there should be an audience available. The students are assessed on vocal and physical skills, characterization, communication, and their artistic intention, the style, the genre, theatrical conventions. And likewise for design, it's about what's being communicated and is it reflecting the artistic intentions and the style and conventions that are being used. It's possible for a student to be able to do design and be a designer in both components 1 and 2 and never perform, that's absolutely fine. So within the specification, we've got the details of what a student would do if they chose to do design. This is the one for component 2. And they could choose, they could move it around. So they could do costume design in component 1, they could do set design in for a component 2 monologue, and then be the the lighting designer for a component 2 group. There's so many different options, and they can design in component 1 and then perform in component 2. So there's lots of different ways in which they can do it. And the designs must be realized in the performance. So when the work is shown, if they've done costume, that the performer will be wearing the costume. So they don't have to make things, by the way, just so that you know. So say, for example, they were a costume designer, somebody else could make the costumes and they will supervise it. So the student has gone through the process and they will provide all the evidence that they've been through the process, but they don't actually have to make it themselves. They don't have to operate the lights. They don't have to operate the sound. They just need to have come up with the prompt copy and all the material for someone else to use. We have design templates on our website for components 1 and 2 that students are able to use. Whilst you're looking at these popular monologues, I'll just look at some of these questions that have come in. Gemma, first of all, would we need to produce the script? Yes, so you need to share the scripts for the examiner to see. And the process that we have at the moment is that you would send a copy of the scripts, the extracts, to the examiner. It looks like for next year, for this new academic year, you would be able to have them on the day, but more on that soon. Sophia, can students perform in the opposite gender role? Absolutely. Yes, they can. That's not a problem. And in some plays, the gender role of the character can be adjusted as well. So it's all about the situation and context. In some plays, it may not work that well, but in other plays, it's absolutely fine. So we don't have any problems with anything at all. So I suppose just be assured that it's not an issue if you have a female student wanting to play Mickey from Blood Brothers, for example. Absolutely fine. And you don't need to tell us, you don't need to announce it. It's just the choice that has been made. So that's fine. Rebecca, will there be a new ASG? An ASG, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this term, is an administrative support guide. And this has lots of information on how to administer the course for all 3 components. And yes, there will be a new one. We'll release that at the start of September. Dahlia, how much editing is allowed in selected monologues? Can I cut out a lot of dialogue or mix and match different monologues? So it's all within reason. So you can sometimes edit out like lines. Sometimes you can create a monologue from a duologue. As long as it makes sense. Taking monologues from different parts of the play is probably something we wouldn't advise you to do. But within a particular extract, you can do some editing. That's absolutely fine. Dahlia has asked, is it okay for performers to add design elements to their performances if they aren't designers? So sound effects, costumes, absolutely. Yeah, not a problem. Let's go for it. There are some teachers who are like, you are not getting on that stage if in that uniform, and we're going to make it look as theatrical as possible. So it's absolutely fine for students to do that. Rebecca, very keen lighting designer next year. Have an old lighting system, looking to updating, but why do I need to rent in some more sophisticated equipment? Not necessarily. So within the specification, we have got the requirements of what you would need, what students should have access to. So like a lighting board with like 24 channels, for example. And I had a question last week from a teacher about they're getting new LED lights and they just don't have the same number of channels. They have far less. And is that still okay? Because it kind of goes against the spec. And of course it is, because with LED lights, there's so many things that you can do within one particular lantern that you would need separate lanterns in old school lighting. So it may be that it's fine. And if you want to contact me about it, I'm happy to help you with that. If you want to send me the details of what you've got, that's great. I'll give you my details at the end, by the way, don't worry. Jenny, could you repeat the information for when this component should be completed? Yes, so this component begins, the window opens, it should be about the 6th of January. And then it will run all the way through to about the 25th of April. So it will be the day before the day after the 25th of April. So it's almost 4 months. Dahlia, how do I know the examiner is for our school? In order to be assigned an examiner, your centre will need to make exam entries, and those exam entries are made in year 11. So once they're done, we will then allocate an examiner to you. All of this information will be in the aforementioned ASG admin support guide. So we will have a look at in a bit more detail, but for the moment, you don't need to worry. Oh yeah, sorry, I just left those up on the screen. Hope there's some interesting choices there for you, things that you recognise, but in our lead examiner report, there are tons of them, so it's worth having a look if you want some ideas. Here's some popular duologues for component 2, and some old and some new plays there, depending on what the set text is that you're choosing to do. And some popular group extracts and plays for designers and where students did really well. In the lead examiner report as well, there's some information around multi-rolling. So we suggest that you avoid multi-rolling unless the play is written to be multi-rolled. And by that, I mean play like Bouncers, for example. In fact, most Jim Cartwright plays where the role is a number of different characters within it, rather than saying to a student that they should play 4 different characters. We just try to avoid that. And the other thing is to avoid, if you're using an extract from a musical or a play that has songs in, like Blood Brothers, that you avoid interpreting the song lyrics as dialogue. So that's something we would avoid. Probably best to just avoid the song altogether. Students are required to produce 100 to 200 words for each extract that they're going to do, and this provides clarity on what they're hoping to communicate in their performance or their design. So they're going to do 2 of these communications of intention, and this is submitted to the examiner before their visit. There aren't any marks for it, but the examiner will assess according to what's written in it in terms of that proposed interpretation. So it's talking about characterization, interpretation, what they would like the audience to experience. So to give you an example, these are the questions that they would answer, and we have a template on our website that you can use. So what role are you playing? What happens to your character? What are the objectives, motivations, and how are you interpreting this? So as an example, there's one from A Midsummer Night's Dream. And you've got playing the role of Helena. In the extract, this is what's happening to her. And then what's my objective? To find out the truth and to stop the men heckling her. And that she changes from bewilderment to humiliation. So it's really just about clarifying what it is that the student intends to do in the performance. As I said, no marks awarded for it though. Some tips from the lead examiner report about high scoring students include um, that they've prepared and that there's a depth of understanding, and that students are well rehearsed and that they understand the character that they're playing and that they've been creative in their interpretation, that they are confident and they have control over what they're doing, that they seem at ease with what it is, and they show range in terms of the vocal and physical skills. And for designers, there's a confidence that they're showing in terms of the subtleties of the choices that they make. How oh, can you go back 2 slides? There was something on the list not covered. Oh, which one? This one? Is it this one, Dahlia? The communication of intention? Oh, this one. Oh, we're going right back in time. Is it this one? The one about no discrete marks awarded. There we go. Lovely. Oh, yeah. So no marks for the communication of intention. And in terms of designers, yet it's really about, if you do have designers, it's about them having the opportunity to kind of show that they've been through a process, and that if you don't feel confident, if you don't feel confident with teaching design, that are there other people in your centre that are able to help, like textiles teachers? Are there any? I mean, there are lots of there's kind of lots of support and guides, and there's some really useful things on the National Theatre website, for example, that can be really helpful for design. But are students being given that kind of the guidance and information that they need in order to be able to do this? So that's component 2. If there are any other questions, then please share them now. And if not, looks okay. Let's move on to component 3. Now, this is where students are showing knowledge and understanding of the works of theatre makers and their creative choices, and they're analysing and evaluating live theatre performance from the perspective of performance and design. Now, section A focuses on the set text. There are 12 set texts to choose from. They're split into 2 lists. List A are 6 texts that are written or originally written before 1954. So there are 3 contemporary adaptations of old plays included in this list. So, for example, A Doll's House, Antigone, and Government Inspector are all quite recently written, but we're including them in list A because they were originally written hundreds and thousands of years ago. List B are 6 texts that are written after the year 2000. So whatever you choose here needs to contrast with component 2 texts that you're doing. So as an example, if you chose to do The Crucible in component 3, in component 2, students can choose any play written after 1954. They can't be historical dramas, and they can't be written by Arthur Miller. So you've still got quite a lot of choice there. If you were doing DNA in component 3, students must choose texts that are written before the year 2000, that aren't black comedies, and aren't written by Dennis Kelly. So again, you've still got quite a lot of choice there about what you can do. For section A, oh, Rebecca, can we select a text student studying English? Yes. So just going back there may be Crucible, Inspector Calls, DNA, could be studied in English, and there is no reason why you couldn't do them in drama as well. Absolutely fine. You cannot choose. So basically, those 12 texts that you see on the screen cannot be used in component 2, even if you're not using them. So you can't if you do an inspector calls, you can't use DNA in component 2. These are only allowed to be used in component 3. My pleasure. Now, in the exam, the students are given the extract from the play that they're studying. Now, when you make exam entries, this is something that will come up in the future, but you just need to make sure that your exams officer puts them in for A or for B, because they won't get the full booklet. They won't get all 12 extracts. They'll only get the list B booklet, or they'll only get the list A booklet. So within the exam paper, they get an extract from the script that they're doing. So they don't need to take a copy of the book in with them. There are 5 questions, 2 on performance, 2 on directors, and 1 from the perspective of a designer. So a total of 45 marks. And this is, excuse me, assessing their understanding of how drama and theatre developed and performed. And we suggest that they take about 75 minutes to respond to these questions. There's a lot to do, but the way in which it's structured, we hope helps them dive in. But we'll look at that in a moment. Section B is about the live theatre experience. It can be an amateur or a professional production. It can be a school production. Live theatre means being a member of the audience in the same performance space. Now, if it's difficult for whatever reason, we will allow the use of recordings or streamed work, but you need to get our permission. The basic line is that you must see it live. If not, if it's for whatever reason, you can't access stuff, there's financial issues, whatever it would be, then you just need to contact us, and we will do our best to support your students. Musicals are allowed, but if it's sung through, like Hamilton or Les Mis, it can't be used. So there has to be some spoken dialogue. Students are allowed to take in notes, and they can take 500 words of notes. And these can include references to performers, design, considerations, impact on the audience, use of space, sketches, drawings, diagrams can be included, no photos. And so there's lots of stuff that you can do. So it's quite good from that perspective that they can take notes in, because they can it's a bit of a safety net for the students when they're having to write those 2 questions. If you're in Egypt, can you watch a play in Arabic and write about it? It is possible to write about plays that aren't written in English. I mean, we would suggest that wherever they can, they do. As long as they can then answer the questions, then there shouldn't be an issue. Not the examiners most likely not to have seen the production that's being referred to. Do you recommend seeing a live version of I mean, okay, seeing a live version of one of the set texts is a really good idea. Obviously, they can't write about it, but that experience can really cement the understanding of the play and about choices and decisions. So if it's possible to, yeah, I definitely recommend that. And thank you for asking that question, Rebecca. No, they can't refer to a production of any of the Section A set texts for the live theatre. Catherine, there's no maximum number of pages for the live theatre notes. No. They can write it over 1 page, 2 pages, 4 pages. It's absolutely fine. Georgina, the majority of centres see the live work. And then if you're located in Oxford, then you do have access to loads of live stuff. You'd have to give us a reason why you needed to use a recording, and if it's not, in most cases, there would be the expectation that you would use the live theatre experience, like for a student not to experience live theatre on this course would be a bit odd when the whole course is about live theatre. It's all about being in the same room. So, but if there's a reason why, then you'd have to explain it. There would have to be a reason, yeah. Um, Students don't have to write about the same performance. No, they could see a number of different things and write about the different ones. The notes should just focus on one production only. So if they'd been to see two and they had two sets of notes, then you just need to say, well, which one do you want to take in? You can't take both sets of notes in with you. So section B, there are two questions. One on performance and one on design, and we suggest approximately 25 minutes to answer those questions. The most popular texts in List A are Inspector Calls and The Crucible, and that might be because they're also studied in English. It might be because they've got copies within the centre of those plays. But students do the other four as well, and we only added Antigone and A Doll's House in 2021 anyway, so they're catching up and they're getting more popular. And in List B, most popular texts are DNA 100 Blue Stockings in 1984, but there were lots more students doing Gone Too Far in the Free Nine last year. There are lots of examples of student responses and hints and tips within the lead examiner reports that comes out in after results day. So some live work that was seen last year included there was some big tours going on of some of these productions. So Ocean at the End of the Lane, Life of Pi, Metamorphosis. It may be that you saw some of those. Stream works that were allowed included Frankenstein, Things I Know to Be True, lots of stuff from the National Theatre website because it's brilliant. I think we may not have any Antigone, Gemma. I need to have a look for you, but mainly because not many students did it last year. But that's something that we can have a look at. And if you wouldn't mind contacting me, then I can put a request in to see if we can get any more from the awarding. So, right, let's have a quick whiz now through the type of questions that come up. And this is focusing on 1984, this question. Brilliant. Ah, lovely. I'm glad to hear that people are choosing to do Antigone because it's a cracking version. So yeah, let's see what we can do for you. It really is, isn't it? The way that the questions are structured is that they get progressively longer and go into more detail. So you can see that with this first one, it's a 4-marker and it's 2 ways in which you use vocal skills. So the student can be quite succinct in this response and still be able to answer and still be able to access the marks. The second question is about 3 suggestions about how to use performance skills. You'll notice that in the question here, there is a verb that's used or an adjective. That's a verb, isn't it? Sorry, I'm terrible at English. But there is a description that's put into the question which clarifies what's going on with the character, and that can be a really useful thing for the students to read in the exam when they're feeling that pressure. It kind of it underlines the motivation or the state during that extract. So it's something to focus on when you're teaching the students about the exam and what they're going to be doing. This is an example of how it's going to be assessed. So this is in the mark scheme and how it's laid out, and just goes into the details. And as you can see, there are look for other reasonable marking points. So not all of the examples here are that's it. There are other ones that students can refer to as well. The 9 marker is from the perspective of a director. So the students are going to choose one of the following to focus on. And in this question, they're going to refer to the context in which the text was created and first performed. So this is not about when the play is set, it's about when the play was written. So if you're doing 1984, of course, it's not about the 50s, or it's not about when it was sorry, it's not about it's not about the 50s when Orwell wrote it, and it's not about 1984. It's about when I nearly called him David Icke, Robert Icke and Duncan Macmillan wrote their version, which was in 2013. So you just need to be clear about what students are focusing on in this, about when the play was written, not when the play was set. We have got some set text guides on our website which contain lots of this information, and you don't have to go and do your own research, or the students don't have to. You can download these from the website, and they have lots of useful stuff in there that the students can then refer to. So within the 1984 one, for example, they talk a lot about Edward Snowden and about surveillance, because that was happening, that was in the news a lot at the time that this particular theatrical version of 1984 was written. So it's something that students could potentially refer to when they're doing this. So the information that I'm showing you on the screen, this is all in the mark schemes that we have available on the website, and they are released each year. Once so I think it's 6 weeks after the papers have been sat. So you should now be able to go onto the website and get the question papers, and the mark schemes will be coming out soon. This is an example of a 12-mark question, again from the perspective of a director, and again we've got this description in the this clarification of the motivation and objective of O'Brien, one of the characters in this scene. So the student has got that right. Okay, I can work from that point, and they're going to be talking about voice, physicality, and stage directions and stage space in their response. And then in the mark scheme, there are some examples of how this could be referred to by the student. So how specific lines may be delivered to demonstrate O'Brien's control and authority through tone, pitch, and pace, etc. Again, the criteria, this is showing that the top level one there about what's expected to be included. And then there are specific choices for designers. This is the final question. So the 14 marker is always on a design focus, and this is about a design element, and the students choose from one of the following. So props, set, sound. Now, what happens each year, so this is in answer to questions, so in answer to Andy's questions, the questions always follow the same pattern. So the 9 mark always refers to a designer. So yeah, so it follows the same pattern, and that it will always be, this 14 marker is always a design question. It will always be that the students choose from 3. The 3 will change each time, but there's actually only 6 that they will be able to choose from. So you can probably see there are ones not there, like lighting and sound. Yeah, it follows the same structure. So if you were to look across the papers, because we've had a number of papers now since 2018, you'll be able to see that the same structure, the same type of questions are being asked each time. What changes are each exam is going to be the extract that they look at, is going to be the characters that they choose, and is going to be some of these foci around choosing one of the following. Fiona, they should be able to talk about with some technical language and knowledge. So if they're talking about sound, they should be able to talk about how sound can be used in a number of different ways in a theatrical context. So and what the purpose is. So when you are teaching them about sound, they will need to understand, again, the same with lighting as well. So they'll need to understand different names of lanterns and what the impact will be, why they would choose a particular lantern for a particular purpose. So there's quite a lot for them to be able to digest. But you know, it's we do have guidance documents and information on our website that will help you do this if you don't have it to hand. I'm just whizzing through these. You can have a look at these in your own time. Obviously, they're in the slides that I've shared with you, but all of this is taken from the mark schemes and the question papers that are on our website that you can access yourselves. In terms of the live theatre evaluation, there's a question on design and there's a question on performance. And as you can see here, this is about a key moment in the performance. So the student will choose whatever it is that they've seen and they'll talk about it. And then within the second question about the physical skills, about creating relationships, you would then be expecting them to talk about how that was implemented with a number of examples. Do students need to state what they watched and where? The students will be able to write that, yeah. So in the answer booklet, they'll be able to say what it is. They've also got their written notes, and on the front of the front sheet of that, they'll have written that down. So when they take the notes in, they're able to remind themselves. They don't have to go from memory because that would be an unnecessary pressure for them. So more on the mark scheme there. I'll just whiz through that. So, in terms of component 3, are there any other questions? I hope I captured all your questions then. I think I answered your one, Rebecca, about the playwright's intentions, but let me know if you need any further clarification on that. Now, in terms of structuring the course, our scheme of work covers this. And one approach that you might take, and it's probably what you were thinking of anyway, is that within year 10, in the first year, that that you introduce them to practical workshops, looking at scripts, doing a little bit of devising, introducing them to live theatre. And it may be that you are exploring the set text in this way. So that might be one of the scripts that you do. And there are lots of centres who do some kind of performance of maybe extracts from the set text, maybe not in the first term, but later on within the year. So that might be an idea of like getting it up on its feet, getting the students to explore and try things out. Lots of centres, the majority of centres do the devising performance in term 3. So they'll start working on preparing the students and giving them all the teaching that they need in term 2, and then they do the devising in term 3. If they do, they might finish the portfolios as well, but that might carry on into the term 1 of year 11. And they might also do some extracts from the set text in term 3. And then in year 11, more exploration on the set text, watch some live theatre, prepare then for component 2. Term 2 is about component 2 assessment and then some component 3 revision. And then, as I said before, the component 3 exam is usually like the second week of May. But if you want to go into more detail of this as an idea of the structure, then have a look at the scheme of work that's in your notes, and it's on the website. A couple of questions. When would you recommend watching the performance? So in terms of this, if it's possible to see work in year 10 and year 11, I think that would be fantastic. And because it can be amateur work, it can be school productions, you've got a range. It doesn't all need to be professional. And because the focus, if possible, is on seeing the live production, like that being in the same room, you might want to wait until year 11 for that and be showing them stream work in year 10. But again, I suppose it depends on your context and what's available and what's in the local area. Um, Laura, to clarify, if we do an inspector calls for component 3, all performance text must be no. If you do an inspector calls, the component 2 text must be from written after 1954. So from 1954 up until 2025, 26. So you've got quite a big range there to look at. Now we've got some great guidance on our website about bringing the set text to life, which I've mentioned, but it's some things that you might want to consider around activities that you can do. So work on vocal skills in terms of where characters are from, understanding a character in a particular moment within a play. There's so much that can be done purely on voice in terms of determining class and situation, age. There's so many things that you can explore with your students in terms of physicality around looking at relationships and emotions within a given moment from the text by creating either a short sequence of mime or a series of still images. I mean, I'm teaching you to suck eggs here. You know what to do as drama teachers about how to bring these things to life. But we do have lots of ideas if you need some inspiration for your particular set text that you're choosing to do. There's lots of ideas on our website. Component 1, Sophie, lots of centres do devising in year 10 in that final term. You don't have to. It's just you might leave it until the first term of year 11 and do it then. You know, come straight back in September, October, bash through it, get it done, do the portfolios, and maybe save the preparation for component 2 until January, February time. And then, so again, it just depends on your situation and how you best want to do it. It just seems to work quite well for lots of centres to do in term 3, because then it's kind of done and dusted, and then they can come back in to look at the work for component 2 and 3 in year 11, just concentrate on that. We've got tons of marked examples, Catherine, for component 3, and on our website, so basically we release a set of 30 each autumn term. So in the exemplar material section of the website, you'll find the component 3 responses, where you can see the full response from the student, and then you'll see the examiner commentary, which says how well they did, why marks were awarded, and why they didn't reach a particular mark, what else they would have needed to do. I'm aware of the time. I'm just going to whiz through these and just show you where things are. On the qualification page, if you go to the course materials tab at the top and then the teaching and learning materials, this is where you're going to find the course planner, the scheme of work, the exemplar material, as I was just saying, for component 3, guidance for centres, FAQs, loads and loads of stuff there. If you are wanting ideas for component 2 texts, we have a section of the website where, if you, for instance, were doing DNA by Dennis Kelly, we've then got all the plays that you could possibly use that would be a contrast with DNA. And that's not exhaustive, but it's pretty substantial. So, and we update that every summer. So you might find that useful. We've got that for all the plays. We have the exemplar library. Now, this is for devising and performance from text. And as you can see, there's a tab at the top. And when you open them, we've got work for every level and we go in, and basically for every mark that's available for performers and designers, and then you're able to watch the performances. It's got the moderator commentary on how well the students did and why they were given the marks that they do. We've got all the lead examiner reports. We've got all the question papers on the website in the exam materials section. So that stretches back to 2018. So you've got quite a few there to read through. At the start of the year, we release a new section on the website where you put your performance text choices in. So for those with year 11 students, you'll need to do this up to 6 weeks before your component 2 exam. So say, for example, you decide to do your component 2 exam in the first week of March, then you need to have submitted your text choices for components 2 and 3 by mid-January. But more on that. Don't worry about that for the moment. That's absolutely fine. And the new admin support guide with all of this information will be available from the first week of September. And it's a bit of a Bible in terms of everything that you need. I release newsletters every month, and if you've subscribed, then you will get a notice in your inbox, but you can also access all of my newsletters on the website as well. So you just go to subjects at the top of the page and then drama, theatre and performing arts, and you can read through them all. I give lots of hopefully useful information on resources, on things coming up, on key dates. And if you ever need to get in touch with me, these are my details. You can email me at teachingperformingarts@pearson.com. There's a phone number that you can call, which will get through to the team. And if I'm available, then you can ask to speak to me. I've got a Facebook group, which is pretty popular at the moment, and we put lots of stuff on there. So it's Pearson Edexcel Drama and Theatre. And you can also book a one-to-one appointment with me. And I've got slots available through the week. So feel free to get in touch. And all of that information is in the notes. The Facebook group is a lifesaver. Well, that's a lovely thing to hear. That's great. Thank you. We're almost done, everyone. We've got 1 minute left. There will be marking and moderation events in the autumn term. There'll be events also for component 2 and component 3. So we've got some new events coming up this year that we hope that you will appreciate and enjoy. Anything else I've missed off? Thank you, Rebecca, for your kind words. I hope that this has been useful. If there's anything that I've not covered, then please just get in touch. I hope that this has given you a good start for your planning and where you're at and what you're doing, and confirmed everything for you. So 5 o'clock on the dot. Thank you all. Take care of yourselves. Have lovely evenings, and hope to speak to you all soon. All right. Thanks for coming. Bye, everyone.